Somebody is. So you're famous to 20.
Our infamous one. You're saying there's 20 people that are watching it?
About 20 people watch the video every week. Yeah. This
Really?
video.
Not all at the same time, but you know.
Well, yeah.
On average, about 20.
Oh, that's good.
Remember, do you know who they are? Are they members or?
No, it doesn't say. I mean, my mom probably watches it.
Okay.
It's funny, it kind of feels funny that I'm saying this on the video now, so people were like,
Yeah.
this video saying it's me who's watching. Let's see. Last week 11, the week before 18, the week before 9, the week before 23. So.
Well, my computer says there's 4 people watching now.
Well, that's us.
That's us. Okay.
Yeah. But it's not, it's on YouTube anyway, so it's nobody watches this live. I mean, I could let them watch it live, but they watch the recording of it.
Yeah.
So you're all famous with like 20 people.
Smile pretty.
So we are in 2 Samuel chapter 17 verse 5. And Absalom is basically trying to take over the kingship from his father. That is where we are.
Okay.
So from verse 5, then Absalom said, call Hushai the Archite. Now Hushai has been a spy in the company of Absalom for David, which we heard about a chapter ago. Call Hushai the Archite also, and let us hear too what he has to say. When Hushai came to Absalom, Absalom said to him, this is what Ahithophel has said. Shall we do as he advises? If not, you tell us. Then Hushai said to Absalom, so by the way, this has to do with them pursuing David and trying to overtake him and kill him. Then Hushai said to Absalom, this time the counsel that Ahithophel has given is not good. Hushai continued, you know that your father and his men are warriors and that they are enraged like a bear robbed of her cubs in the field. Besides, your father is expert in war. He will not spend the night with the troops. Even now he has hidden himself in one of the pits or in some other place. And when some of our troops fall at the first attack, whoever hears it will say there has been a slaughter among the troops who follow Absalom. Then even the valiant warrior whose heart is like the heart of a lion will utterly melt with fear. For all Israel knows that your father is a warrior and that those who are with him are valiant warriors. Well, my counsel is that all Israel be gathered to you from Dan and Beersheba to Beersheba, like the sand by the sea for the multitude, and that you go to battle in person. So we shall come upon him in whatever place he may be found, and we shall light on him as the dew falls on the ground, and he will not survive, nor will any of those with him. If he withdraws into a city, then all Israel will bring ropes to that city, and we shall drag it into the valley until not even a pebble to be found there. Absalom and all the men of Israel said, the counsel of Hushai the Archite is better than the counsel of Ahithophel, for the Lord had ordained to defeat the good counsel of Ahithophel, so the Lord might bring ruin on Absalom. So I'm not the main difference with the counsel between Hushai and Ahithophel. This is such a like a gosh, what is that? A soap opera, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Ahithophel, who is the priest who sort of advises Absalom, says Ahithophel was going to leave and pursue David and just kill David. And Hushai says, no, that's bad advice. You should go and lead the men. You, Absalom, should go lead the men and kill everybody. And remember, Hushai is sort of a spy for David, so he's giving them good advice, but he's actually possibly putting Absalom into a bad position, essentially. So, but it is a little bit of a, it's like court intrigue and soap opera, and
Yep.
yeah. It's I've said this before, and the history books remind me of this so much, but that it's always everybody's just killing everybody else all the time. The chosen people are just constantly fighting amongst themselves. So it's
I'll bet they weren't constantly, but it would be really boring if they had all these quiet times in between. So they just did the highlights. They probably just hit the highlights.
that kind of is, because there have been a few times we've already read that, and there was peace for 20 years or something like that.
Right, yeah.
And that's all that they say. And there was peace for 20 years. And then
Yeah.
they fought some more. Yeah. So that has happened. Then Hushai warns David to escape. Then Hushai said to the priests Zadok and Abiathar, thus and so did, all these names, Ahithophel, counselor Absalom, and the elders of counsel Absalom and the elders of Israel, and thus and so I had counseled. Therefore send quickly and tell David, do not lodge tonight at the fords of the wilderness, but by all means cross over, otherwise the king and all the people who are with him will be swallowed up. Jonathan and Ahimaaz were waiting at En-Rogel. A servant girl used to go and tell them, and they would go and tell King David, for they could not risk being seen entering the city. But a boy saw them and told Absalom, so both of them went away quickly and came to the house of a man at Bahurim, who had a well in his courtyard, and they went down into it. So they're hiding in a well from the man's wife took a covering, stretched it over the well's mouth, and spread out grain on it, and nothing was known of it. When Absalom's servants came to the woman at the house, they said, where are Ahimaaz and Jonathan? Basically spies, right? He's trying to find the spies. The woman said to them, they have crossed over the brook of water. And when they had searched and could not find them, they returned to Jerusalem. After they had gone, the men came up out of the well and went and told King David. They said to David, go and cross the water quickly, for thus and so has Ahithophel counseled against you. So David and all the people who were with him set out and crossed the Jordan. By daybreak, no one was left who had not crossed the Jordan. When Ahithophel had saw that his counsel was not followed, he saddled his donkey and went off home to his own city. He set his house in order and hanged himself. He died and was buried in the tomb of his father.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Remember, again, it's kind of court intrigue and stuff. Ahithophel is the main general and for Absalom, and he's been a primary advisor. I think he's also somehow a priest, kind of like he has got a lot of roles. And suddenly the person who he thinks is the king doesn't take his advice anymore, right? It's kind of a loss of honor and things. So he left and then he kills himself. And the irony is the person that Absalom took the advice from is doing it on David's behalf. So there's so many sort of layers to this. It's a really fascinating kind of a story. All this sort of, spies and intrigue and stuff. And this, the other thing is we don't read these stories much. I think they're interesting. I mean, it kind of goes on and on, but I think it's interesting that we don't know a lot of these stories. What were you gonna say?
I can't follow it. I really can't follow it.
So many new characters that come in. I know.
Why do you suppose that Ahithophel, whatever is called, killed himself? Do you suppose he figured King David was going to send some people to wipe him out anyway?
I'm not totally sure. I think maybe it has a little to do with like loss of position, loss of power, kind of.
Yeah.
He's not, maybe because he's not seeking, no one's seeking his counsel anymore, that he's, at a potential loss of his position or land or whatever, that kind of thing.
Oh, my book had it, I should have read it. It says that he was so convinced that the rebellion would fail that he would be found guilty of treason as a co-conspirator. So I guess he figured he'd just
Yeah,
be friend.
against David. Yeah.
Right.
Interesting. Mine doesn't mention that. Mine does say the report of his death may have had a shaping effect on Matthew's account of the suicide of Judas, who also hanged himself, which is interesting. So David is the king, but he's being pursued now by his son Absalom. Then David came to Mahanaim while Absalom crossed the Jordan with all the men of Israel. Now Absalom had set Amasa over the army in a place of Joab. I think part when Judy, when you're saying there's just so many names, it's hard to keep track what's where.
How do you follow it? Yeah.
And so many people in so many places, it's sort of hard to follow. I get that. And so I'm trying to sort of summarize as we go. I found that too. I usually read ahead, and there's spots where it's not so bad, but then you have these long sections where there's so many new names and of people and places, and we don't really have the references of where these places are, so it makes it a little bit harder. Amasa was a son of a man named Ithra the Ishmaelite, who had married Abigail, daughter of Nahash, sister Zeruiah, Joab's mother. The Israelites and Absalom encamped in the land of Gilead. One reason, well, let me finish this and I'll come back to that. When David came to Mahanaim, Shobi, son of Nahash from Rabbah of the Ammonites, and Mashir, son of Amiel from Lodabar, and Barzillai the Gileadite from Rogelim, brought beds, basins, and earthen vessels, wheat, barley, meal, parched grain, beans, and lentils, honey and curd, sheep and cheese from the herd, for David and the people with him to eat. For they said, the troops are hungry and weary and thirsty in the wilderness. So I believe part of the reason that you have the names mentioned, the names of people and what tribe they are from, because they don't have last names. So it's this person of this tribe.
Yeah.
Is in every case, there's not someone writing this down as it's happening, right? It's happening after the fact. So I think in a lot of cases, whether or not that person was involved or not, I'm assuming the person was involved, but they're making a point of saying the people from this land, it's sort of honoring people that in the future, assuming it actually happened, even if it didn't actually happen. It's saying, look, this tribe, this family, the daughter of Nahash, for instance, this family supported the king.
Yeah.
Because they're probably writing it a generation or two later.
Yeah.
Right. So not like some place in the Bible where they're writing it many hundreds of years later. They're writing between at least 10 years, maybe 20 or 30 years later.
Yeah.
Right. So I think part of the reason that they name a lot of the family names and the people involved is to sort of give honor to those people, or to point out that they were bad or something.
These were the good guys and these were the bad guys.
Right. And
Yeah.
those families still exist, right? So, that it's not just there was a guy named Matthew, right? It's Matthew of this tribe in this place.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
And I think part of that is because they're highlighting later on, it's for a couple reasons: to honor those people, but also to give more proof, more credence to the story, because that family still exists.
Mhm.
Okay.
They remember that Grandpa Joab or whatever, right? Who
Well, yeah.
who helped David or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So,
And some of them were related to, well, probably all of them, but in my book, it says that um, Abigail, the daughter of Nahash, and the sister of Zebiah, was David's sister.
oh, there you go.
Yeah, so they're all kind of related
There's a
on
reason.
David.
There's a reason they're helping him, but yeah, a lot of it, I think, a lot of the names has to do with some of it. The place names is so a lot of those cities. We think that biblical cities are. We know where everything is. We actually don't know where very many are. We know where Jerusalem is, of course. We know where I think Jericho is. Outside of that, a lot of the cities, even cities you think, oh, we know where this is. There, a lot of them have been lost to time. But for at the time, the people listening to the story would know, okay, well, that's that city over there. I mean, the references are more logical. If I was to say, and David crossed over the pass at Raton into Colorado, you'd have a visual of where David is, right? It's that sort of a thing, right? Part of it is so that people when they're hearing the story, can get the context.
Get in your bed.
Defeat and death of Absalom. Then David mustered the men who were with him and set over them commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds. And David divided the army into 3 groups, 1/3 under the command of Joab, 1/3 under the command of Abishai, son of Zeruiah, Joab's brother, and 1/3 under the command of Ittai the Gittite. It's fun to say, Ittai the Gittite. The king said to the men, I myself will also go out with you. But the men said, you shall not go out, for if we flee, they will not care about us. If half of us die, they will not care about us. But you are worth 10,000 of us. Therefore, it's better that you send us help from the city. The king said to them, whatever seems best to you, I will do. So the king stood at the side of the gate while all the army marched out by hundreds and by thousands. The king ordered Joab and Abishai and Ittai, saying, deal gently for my sake with the young man Absalom. And all the people heard when the king gave orders to all the commanders concerning Absalom. So the army went out into the field against Israel, and the battle was fought in the forest of Ephraim. The men of Israel were defeated there by the servants of David, and the slaughter there was great on that day, 20,000 men. The battle spread over the face of all the country, and the forest claimed more victims that day than the sword. Not sure what that means. The forest claimed more people than the sword. My Bible says it would be greatly to the advantage of David's army, which in contrast to Absalom's conscript militia was a professional fighting force with extensive experience of guerrilla warfare. This situation shows the cleverness of Hushai's disingenuous advice to Absalom. So they could have fought in the plains, but they fought in the forest instead, where David's army knew how to fight in the forest and Absalom's army didn't.
Sort of like the Revolutionary War.
Yeah, a lot like the Revolutionary War. It's really
Yeah.
That's it. What an interesting. The forest claimed more victims that day than the sword.
Yeah.
What an interesting.
It makes you wonder if the wild animals were after them.
Yeah. Also, that the guerrilla warfare kind of thing. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I remember. There's a couple movies that kind of depict it, but the British soldiers would march in a straight line down roads, and the Americans would just wait hiding behind trees until they were all in the middle and they'd in the crossfire. That's probably the reason they could win.
Yeah.
Same kind of thing is going on here.
Yeah. Well, Dan, even that happened in World War II. The Navajo code talkers were so skillful at being silent that they could sneak up on a Japanese soldier and kill him before the Japanese soldier even knew the Navajo was close by.
Wow. Yeah. Absalom happened to meet the servants of David. Absalom was riding on his mule, and the mule went under the thick branches of a great oak. His head caught fast on the oak, and he was left hanging between heaven and earth, while the mule that was under him went on. That's a funny picture. So he's walking along, Nobody does anything to him. He catches his head on a branch and he's stuck.
And it's that hair of his that was so,
And the mule keeps walking.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. He didn't think to duck, I guess. A man saw it and told Joab, I saw Absalom hanging in an oak. Joab said to the man who told them, what, you saw him? Why then did you not strike him there to the ground? I would have been glad to give you 10 pieces of silver and a belt. But the man said to Joab, even if I felt in my hand the weight of 1,000 pieces of silver, I would not raise my hand against the king's son. For in our hearing, the king commanded you and Abishai and Ittai, saying, for my sake, protect the young man Absalom. On the other hand, if I had dealt treacherously against his life, and there is nothing hidden from the king, then you yourself would have stood aloof. Joab said, I will not waste time like this with you. He took 3 spears in his hand and thrust them into the heart of Absalom while he was still alive in the oak. He couldn't get himself free from the odd way of dying. But David had said, keep him safe, and his general killed him.
Yeah.
And 10 young men, Joab's armor bearers, surrounded Absalom and struck him and killed him. Then Joab sounded the trumpet, and the troops came back from pursuing Israel, for Joab restrained the troops. They took Absalom, threw him into a great pit in the forest, and raised over him a very great heap of stones. Meanwhile, all the Israelites fled to their homes. Now Absalom in his lifetime had taken and set up for himself a pillar that is in the king's valley. For he said, I have no son to keep my name in remembrance. He called the pillar by his own name. It is called Absalom's monument to this day.
Oh.
Remember, Absalom killed David's sons, and then David killed Absalom's sons.
So who was Joab again?
Joab was one of the generals of David.
Was he related to David though, or was he just a general?
I don't know.
Maybe he was, I was going to say, maybe he was tired of chasing Absalom around.
Yeah.
Possibly. Remember, I mean, he was also being chased around when Saul was king.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
David spent a lot of time running from people who thought they were a king when he was. Because when he had been anointed king, but Saul didn't want to give up his position, and so Saul kept fighting him. And now Absalom had decided he was king, and poor David, running away from people who also want to be king. David hears of Absalom's death. I'm still visualizing this. Absalom literally doesn't duck and gets stuck in a tree, hanging from his neck.
Well, it says he had abundant hair. He must have had, his hair got caught in the tree, you know.
And it was stuck hanging from the tree like an ornament.
Yeah.
What a way to die.
Yeah.
Well, it's easy to get clotheslined if you're riding through the forest, and I mean, I can see how that would happen. Believe me.
I've had that happen on a horse.
Yeah.
The horse ducks and you get smacked in the face with a branch.
Right.
But to have it take you all the way off the horse and be stuck in the tree is quite a feat.
Yeah.
Then Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, said, let me run and carry tidings to the king that the Lord has delivered him from the power of his enemies. Joab said to him, you are not to carry tidings today. You may carry tidings another day, but today you shall not do so, because the king's son is dead. So Joab didn't want him to tell the king today. And Joab said to a Cushite, go tell the king what you have seen. The Cushite bowed before Joab and ran. Then Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, said again to Joab, come what may, let me also run after the Cushite. And Joab said, why will you run, my son, seeing that you have no reward for the tidings? Come what may, he said, I will run. So he said to him, run. Then Ahimaaz ran by the way of the plain and outran the Cushites. They raced to tell David the news of his son being killed. Sorry, my phone was dinging, so I'm turning off the ringer. Now David was sitting between the two gates. The sentinel went up to the roof of the gate by the wall, and when he looked up, he saw a man running alone. The sentinel shouted and told the king. The king said, "If he is alone, there are tidings in his mouth." He kept coming and drew near. Then the sentinel saw another man running, and the sentinel said to the gatekeeper and said, "See another man running alone." The king said, "See, he is also bringing tidings." The sentinel said, "I think the running of the first one is like the running of Ahimaaz, son of Zadok." The king said,
Wow.
he is a good man and comes with good tidings." He could tell him by the way he ran.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Then Ahimaaz cried out to the king, "All is well." He prostrated himself before the king with his face to the ground and said, "Blessed be the Lord your God, who has delivered up the men who raised their hand against my lord the king." The king said, "Is it well with the young man Absalom?" Ahimaaz answered, "When Joab sent your servant, I saw a great tumult, but I do not know what it was." The king said, "Turn aside and stand here." So he turned aside and stood still. Then the Cushite came, and the Cushite said, "Good tidings for my lord the king. For the Lord has vindicated you this day, delivering you from the power and all who rose up against you." The king said to the Cushite, "Is it well with the young man Absalom?" Cushite answered, "May the enemies of my lord the king and all who rise up to do you harm be like that young man."
Oh.
Neither one of them, they were both afraid to tell.
Yeah,
And if you remember from previous times, sometimes the messenger, don't shoot the messenger.
yeah,
Sometimes the messenger who had nothing to do with the death of somebody was killed for giving them that message.
yeah, yeah.
Yes,
I kind of wonder if that's not part of the thing here, right? That I'm saying that your enemy is defeated. I'm not going to say how your son fared,
Yeah, yeah.
because David had specific instructions not to kill his son. But you assume that he can read between the lines,
Mhm.
especially from that last statement. "May the
Yes.
enemies of my lord the king and all who rise up to do you harm be like that young man." That's pretty. It's subtle, but it's pretty powerful too, right? The king was deeply moved and went up to the chamber over the gate and wept. And as he went, he said, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, would I had died instead of you, Absalom, my son, my son."
But nobody had told him that Absalom was dead.
Not specifically.
I think he kind of got
I
it
think
though.
he figured it out. Yeah. It's such a, so remember this all happened from Absalom's sister Tamar being raped by another brother. And so Absalom kills all of the sons of David because they all allowed the rape to happen and didn't do anything.
Yeah,
And so David has no sons other than Absalom. And I don't think. And then David at one point kills Absalom's son. So now Absalom has no heir. Like, yet they love each other.
yeah.
oh,
They
yeah,
say they love each other.
I kind of love.
yes, oh, yes.
It's an interesting relationship that they have.
But there's still Solomon, so,
Right. He can still have babies, and that will happen a little later.
okay,
It was told Joab, "The king is weeping and mourning for Absalom." So the victory that day was turned into mourning for all the troops. For the troops heard that day the king is grieving for his son. The troops stole into the city that day as soldiers steal in who are ashamed when they flee in battle. The king covered his face, and the king cried with a loud voice, "Oh, my son Absalom, oh, Absalom, my son, my son." Then Joab came into the house of the king and said, "Today you have covered with shame the faces of all your officers who have saved your life today, and the lives of your sons and your daughters, and the lives of your wives and your concubines, for love of those who hate you and for hatred of those who love you. You have made it clear today that the commanders and officers are nothing to you. For I perceive that if Absalom were alive and all of us were dead today, then you would be pleased." Wow. That's some strong language.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So go out at once and speak kindly to your servants, for I swear by the Lord, if you do not go, not a man will stay with you this night. And this will be worse for you than any disaster that has come upon you from your youth until now. Then the king got up and took a seat in the gate. The troops were all told, see, the king is sitting in the gate. And all the troops came before the king. So it's an interesting thing. He commanded them to go out and fight for him,
Mhm.
but he also commanded them to save Absalom's life.
Yeah.
And they win the battle pretty handily, but Absalom is killed against David's wishes.
Yeah.
And David mourns the death, and Joab gets so mad because like, look, you should be celebrating, not mourning. Your enemy has been defeated. And if you don't celebrate and show your troops that you're happy that they won the battle, they may all abandon you.
Yeah.
That's pretty, I mean, it's such, I mean, I don't think it's wrong for David to mourn his son, even though his son was hoping to kill him. At the same time, that Joab's right.
Mhm.
You told your armies to fight. Your armies won a hard-fought battle. You need to show appreciation for that.
Yeah.
They did what you told them to do, even if your son was killed. So he did. I can sort of visualize David like moping. He's like,
Yeah.
fine, I'll sit there and show them that I'm happy. I'll put on a fake smile.
Yeah.
But you notice that Joab didn't say that he was the one that killed Absalom.
Right. Nobody wants to
That-
say that because it could be bad later on, right?
Right.
Because David could possibly kill someone who killed his son. Especially since he told them save him specifically.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm trying to decide how much further we're gonna go here. I think we'll do. Okay. David recalled to Jerusalem. Meanwhile, all the Israelites had. So the Israelites, that's another part that's confusing. The Israelites were the ones who were following. I mean, in this case, Israelites are the ones who were following Absalom. So even though they're all Hebrews, Israelites. Remember, Israel is also a tribe of Israel, so a tribe of the 12 tribes. So that's kind of what they're saying here. It's confusing, right? The Israelites had fled to their homes. All the people were disputing throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, the king delivered us from the hand of our enemies and saved us from the hand of Philistines. And now he has fled out of the land because of Absalom. But Absalom, whom we anointed over us, is dead in battle. Now, therefore, why do you say nothing about bringing the king back? So a lot of the tribes had said, we'd rather have Absalom king. But now they're like, well, Absalom's dead, so maybe
We'll take David.
we'll take David. Yeah. King David sent this message to the priests Zadok and Abiathar. Say to the elders of Judah, why should you be the last to bring the king back to his house? The talk of all Israel has come to the king. You are my kin, you are my bone and my flesh. Why then should you be the last to bring back the king? And say to Amasa, are you not my bone and my flesh? So may God do to me and more if you are not the commander of my army from now on in place of Joab. Amasa.
What?
Who is Amasa? Amasa. 13. To conciliate the people of Judah who must have represented Absalom's chief support, David appoints his kinsman Amasa as commander of the army in place of Joab, who executed Absalom. So he's that one of the tribes, the tribe of Judah, supported Absalom the most. And so he's appointing someone from that tribe as commander of his army in place of Joab, because Joab killed his son, to sort of appease that whole tribe. Which kind of makes sense. He gave them some position of power so that that tribe would support David. It's all political moving, right? It's
Yeah.
all
Mm.
trying to make sure everybody's happy. Verse 14, Amasa swayed the hearts of all the people of Judah as one, and they sent word to the king, return both you and all your servants. So the king came back to the Jordan, and Judah came to Gilgal to meet the king and to bring him over the Jordan. Shimei, son of Gera, the Benjamite from Bahurim, hurried to come down with the people of Judah to meet King David. With him were 1,000 people from Benjamin, another tribe, right? And Ziba, the servant of the house of Saul, with his 15 sons and his 20 servants, rushed down to the Jordan ahead of the king while the crossing was taking place, to bring over the king's household and to do his pleasure. Remember, I don't know if you remember this, last week when David left the palace, he left his servants in place.
Mhm.
Right.
Well, they're still around.
Oh.
And they're coming down to serve David again.
I thought he only left 20 concubines, or was that somebody else?
I know he left. We know he left servants too. So,
Okay.
yeah, and he. The other thing I found interesting. I'm just remembering something from last week. He left instead of taking the Ark of the Covenant, he left the Ark of the Covenant.
Mhm.
So it's like he knew that he'd be back,
Mhm.
even though he was sent away. I mean, chased away by Absalom. Shimei, son of Gera, fell down before the king as he was about to cross the Jordan and said to the king, may the Lord not hold me guilty, or remember how your servant did wrong on the day my lord the king left Jerusalem. May the king not bear it in mind. For your servant knows that I have sinned. Therefore, see, I have come this day, the first of all the house of Joseph, to come down to meet my lord the king. So he's in chapter 16. This person, Shimei, fought against David. And now he's like, oh, you won. I better play nice. Oh, that's the guy. So David came seeking shelter, and a guy came out, threw stones at David and all the people, and Shimei cursed him and told him to leave, and threw rocks at him. So David left. Now that guy's saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that." Abishai, son of Zeruiah, answered, shall not Shimei be put to death for this, because he cursed the Lord's anointed? But David said, what have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah, that you should today become an adversary to me? Shall anyone be put to death in Israel this day? For do I not know that I am this day king over Israel? The king said to Shimei, you shall not die. And the king gave him his oath. Another big name, Mephibosheth, grandson of Saul, came down to meet the king. He had not taken care of his feet or trimmed his beard or washed his clothes from the day the king left until the day he came back in safety. When he came from Jerusalem to meet the king said to him, oh, why did you not go with me, Mephibosheth? He answered, my lord, O king, my servant deceived me. For your servant said to him, saddle a donkey for me, so that I may ride out and go with the king, for your servant is lame. He has slandered your servant to my lord the king, but my lord the king is like the angel of God. Do therefore what seems good to you. For all my father's house were doomed to death before my lord the king. But you set your servant among those who eat at your table. What further right have I then to appeal to the king? The king said to him, why speak any more of your affairs? I have decided, you and Ziba shall divide the land. Mephibosheth said to the king, let him take it all, since my lord the king has arrived home safely. So this is one of the sons of I think the sons of Absalom, who survived, therefore David's grandson. And David is talking about dividing the land among his heirs. 24 to 30. It's like everybody's making nice with David now that he won the battle and
Yeah.
he's returning home.
Mhm.
All the people that were against him are saying, hey, by the way, I may have been against you, but I'm for you now.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't be mad at me that I didn't support you before. We've seen 3 of them so far. I'm so surprised you won. I mean, I'm so happy you won.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of how it feels. Now, Barzillai the Gileadite had come down from Rogelim, who went on with the king to the Jordan to escort him over the Jordan. Barzillai was a very aged man, 80 years old. He had provided the king with food while he stayed at Mahanaim, for he was a very wealthy man. The king said to Barzillai, come over with me and I'll provide for you in Jerusalem at my side. The Barzillai, so that just happened very recently. Remember that list of all the food we read a couple chapters ago?
Oh,
That was the one who helped him. Barzillai said to the king, how many years have I still to live that I should go up with the king to Jerusalem? Today I am 80 years old. Can I discern what is pleasant and what is not? Can your servant taste what he eats and what he drinks? Can I listen to the voice of singing men and singing women? Why then should your servant be an added burden to my lord the king? He's saying, I'm too old. All this stuff, I can't even tell. I can barely hear or see. So what does it matter?
yeah.
Your servant will go a little way over the Jordan with the king. Why should the king recompense me with such a reward? Please let your servant return so that I may die in my own town near the graves of my father and mother. But here is your servant Chimham. Let him go over with my lord the king and do for him whatever seems good to you. The king answered, Chimham shall go over with me, and I will do for him whatever seems good to you, and all that you desire of me I will do for you. Then all the people crossed over the Jordan. The king crossed over. The king kissed Barzillai and blessed him, and he returned to his own home. The king went on to Gilgal, and Chimham went on with him. All the people of Judah and also half the people of Israel brought the king on his way. Then all the people of Israel came to the king and said to him, why have our kindred, the people of Judah, stolen you away and brought the king and his household over the Jordan and all David's men with him? All the people of Judah answered the people of Israel, because the king is not near of kin to us. Why then are you angry over this matter? Have we eaten at all at the king's expense, or has he given us any gift? So there's infighting among the tribes, right? The ones that supported David are asking the ones that didn't support David, wait, why are you suddenly supporting the king? Yeah, you don't deserve this. You don't deserve to be given a place of honor by the king. But the people of Israel answered the people of Judah, we have 10 shares in the king, and in David we also have more than you. Why then do you despise us? Were we not the first to speak of bringing back our king? But the words of the people of Judah were fiercer than the words of the people of Israel. So they're yelling at each other, saying, who's going to show more loyalty to David now that he's back? This is interesting. Judah, which was totally against him, but he's more from that part of the tribe, and Israel, who was for him, they're both claiming, ownership or whatever. They're claiming that they have more right to support David. Everybody's towing the line now. It's like everybody bet against him, and now they're all sort of repositioning themselves politically. Unfortunately, that's kind of what it is, right? I'm gonna stop there because we're gonna have a rebellion next.
Okay.
We're gonna have a few things happen. We're actually getting kind of close to the end of 2 Samuel. One thing I wanted to say is it can be a little, reading the history books can be a little daunting, but at least the writing of the book, the kind of style of writing changes a little bit by bit. Kings is which is our next book. The style changes a little bit. When it's so much of a narrative, a good book has a beginning, middle, and end. right? I remember my English professor saying, a good essay has all these parts, right? Well, this doesn't, it's just a string. It's just a stream of consciousness. And then this happened, and then this happened, and this happened. So it starts to get a little like, we kind of crave, at least like the end to a chapter, but it never feels like it does that. It keeps kind of going. We're going to have the end of Second Samuel is basically the end of the reign of David. It goes a little bit into Kings, but we'll see how that goes, and then we'll be into Solomon. So thank you all very much.
Okay.
I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Be thinking of me as I drive about 500 miles today.
Absolutely. Drive careful. I
Yes.
heard the weather is still pretty cold up there.
It's cold. There's no snow forecast right now, but
Okay.
it's cold. So, yep, I'll be staying at my mom's tonight. I'll be there about 7. So if my mom's watching this recording, knows.
Good morning.
she knows I'm coming.
Okay.